Have you ever felt like saving money means sacrificing everything you enjoy? Like becoming rich requires huge life changes, strict budgeting, or giving up your comfort? What if I told you that's a myth, and that people around the world are becoming quietly wealthy through a tiny habit so simple it barely feels like effort? They're not working more. They're not giving up their lifestyle. They're just doing one thing consistently. If you're tired of financial stress and want a smarter, psychology-backed way to build wealth without burning out, stay with me till the end of this talk. This might just change the way you think about money forever. Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by challenging a popular belief that financial success only comes from big leaps, big salaries, big cuts, or big changes in lifestyle. This belief is one of the biggest reasons why many people stay stuck in the same financial cycle year after year, because it overwhelms them before they even begin. But what if the truth was the opposite? What if the secret to becoming rich didn't lie in big steps, but in tiny ones? Psychologically speaking, that's exactly what research now confirms. Wealth isn't built in sprints. It's built in slow, quiet, almost invisible steps, what behavioral experts call micro-habits. Now imagine this. A person saves just 100 rupees a day. That's not life-changing today, but they do it every single day without fail. In a month, that's 3,000 rupees. In a year, 36,000 rupees. But it's not just about the math. It's about what this habit does to their brain. You see, the human brain resists large changes. When you tell yourself, "From tomorrow I will save half my income," your mind immediately pushes back. It sees the change as a threat. It fears loss. It fears restriction. But when a habit is small, so small it feels almost effortless, your mind allows it. There's no resistance. That's the genius of tiny habits. They don't activate fear. They activate flow. Let's take an example from psychology, the principle of behavioral momentum. It tells us that once you start doing something easy and repeatable, you naturally gain energy and confidence to keep going. So when someone saves a small amount daily, without thinking too much, it becomes a routine. That routine becomes a behavior, and that behavior slowly transforms into a mindset. Without realizing it, that person has become a saver, not because they made one big decision, but because they repeated one small one over and over again. There's another layer here that's even more powerful: identity. When you build a habit like this, you don't just change your bank account. You change how you see yourself. Instead of saying, "I'm bad with money," you begin to believe, "I'm someone who takes care of their future." And the brain follows identity much faster than it follows rules. Once your identity shifts, your actions follow naturally, without pressure. And here's where it gets even more interesting. This habit doesn't require lifestyle changes. You're not giving up dinner with friends. You're not canceling your Netflix subscription. You're not denying yourself small joys. You're simply creating a side path for your money, a parallel stream, one where every day just a little bit flows toward your future, quietly, steadily, effortlessly. This is what makes the habit sustainable. When people try to change everything at once, they burn out, they relapse, they give up. But when the habit feels natural, when it fits into your life like brushing your teeth or checking your phone, it lasts. And anything that lasts compounds. Compounding isn't just a financial principle. It's a psychological one. Repeated actions compound into beliefs. Beliefs compound into identity. Identity compounds into a new way of living. So when someone asks, how are they becoming rich without changing their lifestyle? The answer is simple. They didn't change everything. They changed one small thing and made it non-negotiable. And that's something you can do too. You don't need to wait for the perfect job, the perfect income, or the perfect moment. You need to decide on one tiny habit. Maybe it's saving 50 rupees or 100 rupees a day. Maybe it's transferring a small amount to a separate account before you spend anything else. Whatever it is, make it small, make it easy, make it daily. Because wealth isn't about what you do once in a while. It's about what you do consistently, even when it feels like it's not making a difference. But over time, it does, and it always will. Have you ever bought something small, like your favorite iced coffee, a snack, or a new t-shirt, and then felt just a little guilty afterward? That tiny voice in your head whispers, maybe I didn't really need that, but it's too late. The money's already gone. Now imagine if, instead of guilt, every time you treated yourself, you turned it into a win, not a financial loss, but a financial habit. That's exactly what the treat yourself tax does. And surprisingly, it's helping thousands of people across the world quietly build wealth without changing anything else about their lifestyle. The concept is disarmingly simple. Every time you make a non-essential purchase, you tax yourself by saving an equal or smaller amount alongside it. For example, if you spend 500 rupees on a meal at your favorite restaurant, you immediately transfer 100 rupees, 250 rupees, or even a full 500 rupees into your savings account. It's not a punishment. It's a signal to your brain, I can enjoy life and still plan for my future. And that one signal, repeated consistently, creates a powerful behavioral shift. Now, here's why this works so effectively, especially from a psychological perspective. Traditional saving methods often involve restriction. Don't buy this. Cancel that. Cut back here. But the brain naturally resists deprivation. When people feel forced to restrict themselves, they develop what psychologists call reactance, the urge to rebel against rules, even if those rules are self-imposed. That's why extreme budgeting often fails. It triggers emotional backlash. The treat yourself tax avoids this entirely. Instead of saying no to what you want, you say yes. But pair it with an act of mindfulness. You still get the dopamine hit from buying something you love. But you also trigger a second wave of satisfaction by knowing you made a smart move toward your financial goals. In fact, this dual-layer response activates both the reward system and the prefrontal cortex in your brain, the part responsible for planning, decision-making, and self-control. That's a rare balance. It also builds a bridge between your present self and your future self. Psychologists often talk about how disconnected we feel from our future selves. It's why we procrastinate, overspend, and delay important decisions. The treat yourself tax reconnects that broken link. Each time you save alongside spending, you're telling your future self, I haven't forgotten you. And over time, that habit deepens your sense of control, agency, and confidence. There's another powerful aspect to this habit. It leverages the momentum of emotional spending. Most impulse purchases are emotionally charged. We buy when we're bored, stressed, celebrating, or seeking comfort. That emotional charge, left unchecked, can lead to overspending and regret. But when we attach a saving action to the spending, we anchor that emotion to something constructive. The emotion doesn't vanish, but it now fuels a healthy behavior. And let's not forget how visual and trackable this can be. People who practice this habit often see their savings grow faster than expected. Not because they cut back, but because they link saving to something they were already doing. Over a few months, small amounts stack up in a visible way. It's concrete proof that smart saving doesn't require struggle. It just requires intention. There's also a social and psychological benefit at play here, one that many people underestimate. When you start associating treats with responsibility, your identity starts to shift. You no longer feel like someone who's bad with money or someone who can't control their spending. Instead, you begin to see yourself as someone who enjoys life while still staying grounded. This balance, this emotional harmony, is often what leads to long-term financial resilience. And no, you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to save an equal amount every single time. Even saving 20% or 30% of your purchase cost is enough to build a habit. What matters is a consistency and a psychological connection. When I enjoy something today, I invest in tomorrow. That thought alone, if repeated enough, becomes a form of internal programming. And this programming can stick for life. Another advantage? It works on any scale. Whether you're spending 200 rupees or 20,000 rupees, the principle remains the same. You're not just reacting to money, you're shaping your behavior with awareness. You're creating a habit loop where pleasure and discipline work together, not against each other. This cooperation between short-term enjoyment and long-term planning is what most financial systems fail to teach. People often think saving means saying no. But what if it actually means saying yes to both today and tomorrow? That's the psychological brilliance of the treat yourself tax. It teaches you that you can build wealth not by denying joy, but by pairing it with intention. And the best part? You don't need a new budget. You don't need a financial advisor. You just need a reminder that every time you treat yourself, your future self deserves a treat too. Every day, whether we realize it or not, we make dozens of decisions about money. Some of them are obvious, like paying a bill or buying groceries. But others are more subtle, like deciding whether to eat out or cook at home, whether to buy the name brand item or the cheaper alternative. What most people don't know is that behind every one of these decisions, there's a hidden psychological process shaping our behavior. It's called mental accounting, and it plays a much bigger role in our saving and spending habits than most of us ever realize. Mental accounting is a concept introduced by behavioral economist Richard Thaler, and it describes how we mentally separate our money into different categories or accounts based not on logic, but on emotion and perception. For example, someone might keep a strict budget for groceries but easily splurge on entertainment, even if both expenses come from the same paycheck. Or someone might hesitate to spend $50 from their salary, but feel perfectly fine spending the same amount from a gift or tax refund. The money is the same, but how we perceive it changes everything. This perception-based system influences everything, from how we spend to how we save. Most people believe that financial decisions are rational, but in reality, they're emotional and heavily influenced by mental frames. That's why someone might be diligent about not touching their emergency fund, but feel okay wasting money on random online shopping just this once. They've put that emergency fund in a sacred mental account. But daily spending? That's part of their disposable category. And here's where it gets interesting. This mental separation can either sabotage us or save us, depending on how we use it. The people who succeed with small saving habits often do one thing differently. They use mental accounting to their advantage. Instead of seeing all their money as one big, overwhelming pool, they create clear mental and sometimes even physical categories. One for fixed expenses, one for fun, one for guilt-free treats, one for savings. Some people even name their accounts things like Freedom Fund, Future Self, or Dream Wallet. Why? Because giving money an identity makes it more real. It creates emotional connection and accountability. Let's take an example. Imagine you create a separate savings account and label it Peace of Mind. Every time you transfer even a small amount into that account, you're not just saving money, you're reinforcing a feeling. Your brain begins to associate that act with a sense of calm, security, and control. And because human behavior is driven more by emotion than logic, this emotional reinforcement is what builds lasting habits. Over time, you start to protect that account instinctively. It's no longer just savings. It's something meaningful to you. Now think about the reverse. When people don't have mental separation, all their income blends into one stream. There's no clarity on what belongs where. That's when impulse spending happens. That's when accidental financial leaks go unnoticed. But the moment you create distinct buckets, even if just mentally, you start making more conscious choices. And those choices add up, not because you're working harder, but because you've simplified the decision-making process. You remove friction. Mental accounting also helps solve a major modern-day challenge, decision fatigue. With hundreds of financial choices thrown at us every week, offers, discounts, flash sales, financial stressors, our brains get tired. That's when poor decisions happen. But when you've pre-decided that a certain portion of money is only for savings or only for essentials, your brain doesn't have to fight with itself every time. The habit becomes automatic. It's the same reason envelope methods and cash-based budgeting work so well. Even if digital, the concept is rooted in mental accounting. You assign purpose to your money before you spend it, not after. And that one shift, purpose before purchase, is often the difference between chaos and clarity in personal finance. The best part is, mental accounting doesn't require massive income or complex tools. It works for someone earning $1,000 a month or $10,000 a month. It's about intention, not scale. A person who saves $10 a week in a clearly defined savings account is often more financially stable than someone who earns 5 times more but never tracks where their money flows. In fact, Many people who appear rich are simply suffering from blurred mental categories. They earn a lot, but they spend blindly. Their savings, their lifestyle, and their long-term goals all exist in one messy mental drawer. And when you ask them where their money goes, they genuinely don't know. That's the cost of poor mental accounting. Meanwhile, those who assign meaning to their money, even small amounts, begin to build structure, stability, and eventually, wealth. They're not financially smarter. They're behaviorally more organized. That's the power of this tiny habit. It teaches you to be deliberate. It allows you to control your environment rather than be controlled by it. You stop being reactive. You start becoming intentional. And with that, you begin to build a system, one that feels natural, stress-free, and surprisingly effective. In the end, saving money isn't always about cutting back or earning more. Often, it's simply about paying closer attention to how you think about money. Because when your mind is organized, your money tends to follow. Most people think building wealth requires effort, sacrifice, or even stress. But what if the real key wasn't working harder, but removing effort altogether? What if the smartest decision you could make today didn't involve changing your lifestyle, but changing the system you use to manage your money? Here's where the power of automation comes in. Automating your savings may sound too simple to be revolutionary, but psychology and behavioral economics both tell a different story. Human beings are creatures of habit, but more than that, we are creatures of avoidance. We avoid friction, decision-making, and anything that requires willpower. That's why even people with the best financial intentions often struggle to follow through. But automation removes the need for willpower. It eliminates the chance to forget. It replaces hesitation with action. Let's take a simple example. Imagine someone decides to save $5 a day. Instead of reminding themselves each day to transfer that money, they set up an auto transfer from their checking account to their savings account. It happens every morning, like clockwork. No emotional resistance. No decision-making fatigue. No chance to overthink. This tiny step eliminates the biggest reason most people fail to save. They rely on memory and discipline. Behavioral science calls this the power of the default. We're more likely to go with whatever is automatic. That's why most people stay subscribed to services they no longer use. That's why workplace retirement plans that automatically enroll employees have dramatically higher participation rates than those that require manual opt-in. The moment something is set as a default, it becomes a path of least resistance. And in finance, the path of least resistance should lead towards savings, not away from it. What's remarkable is that automating even a small amount creates long-term behavior change. It does more than grow your bank balance. It reshapes how you view yourself. Over time, you begin to see yourself as someone who's disciplined, consistent, and in control. That's a powerful identity shift. Because when your subconscious accepts that saving is something you just do, your conscious mind stops fighting the process. It also gives you back mental bandwidth. Think about how much stress people carry around money. Not because they're reckless, but because they're constantly making micro decisions. Should I save this? Should I spend that? Is now the right time? This creates what psychologists call decision fatigue, where each tiny financial choice chips away at your energy and self-control. But automation removes that weight. You no longer have to decide to save. You just do it. What's more, automating your finances also helps regulate emotional spending. We all have emotional triggers, loneliness, boredom, anxiety, that push us toward impulse purchases. And those purchases often happen before we save anything. But when your savings are automatically moved at the beginning of each week or month, you've already paid yourself first. What's left is yours to use as you wish, without guilt or chaos. And that simple mental shift gives you more freedom, not less. Some people fear that automating savings means they'll lose control. But the opposite is true. Automation gives you more control by protecting your money from your moods. It builds consistency in a space where inconsistency ruins results. And over time, that consistency compounds. Let's talk numbers. Say you set up an automatic transfer of $10 a day. That's $300 a month. $3,650 a year. Invest that with even modest returns. And in a decade, you built tens of thousands in quiet wealth. But more importantly, you've done it without feeling a single moment of restriction. You didn't give up your lifestyle. You didn't make major sacrifices. You just built a system that worked behind the scenes while you lived your life. This is where the true beauty of financial psychology comes in. Our minds are wired to avoid pain and seek pleasure. Saving, when manual, often feels like restriction. But when it's automated, it feels neutral or even satisfying. It becomes a rhythm, not a task. And rhythms are sustainable. When saving becomes automated, it becomes invisible. And when something is invisible, it becomes effortless. You stop thinking about it. You stop worrying about it. You just check in after a few months and realize you've been quietly building wealth all along. In the end, success isn't always about doing more. Sometimes it's about setting up the right system and then getting out of your own way. Automation is not just a finance tool. It's a psychological hack. It protects you from procrastination. It protects you from inconsistency. And most importantly, it protects your future self from the regrets of inaction. If there's one small step that has the power to transform your financial future without changing your current lifestyle, it's this: automate your savings. Once. Let it run. And watch what happens when time, habit, and psychology start working in your favor. So, after everything we've explored, the tiny habit, the psychology behind it, the invisible power of automation, and surprising compounding of small savings, one truth stands clear. Wealth isn't reserved for the privileged, the lucky, or the highly disciplined. It's built by those who understand how behavior works. It's built by those who do the small things consistently. And most importantly, it's built quietly, without fanfare, without stress, and without turning your life upside down. This tiny habit of saving a small amount each day, automated and aligned with your daily rhythm, removes resistance. It turns intention into action and action into identity. Over time, it doesn't just grow your bank account. It changes how you see yourself. From someone trying to get ahead to someone already on the path. The best part? You don't need to change who you are. You don't need to deny yourself joy or pleasure. You simply need to make one small decision, once, and let it repeat for you. Because real wealth isn't about what you earn, it's about what you repeat. So ask yourself today, not how much can I save, but what system can I build, starting right now, that will quietly make me rich while I live my life? Your future self is already thanking you.